Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist, where you'll learn all the hacks you need to get started and finished on your business or project. You'll connect with successful entrepreneurs who are in perfectionist rehab, unapologetically experimenting and balancing life, business, family, and me time. I'm your host and Chief Recovering Perfectionist, Claire Barton. Hi everyone, it's Claire Barton. Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist. I'm here with Lynette, Delane, who is a tech translator at Kits and Bits today. We're going to find out what the hell that actually means in a second. Hey, how are you, Lynette?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Claire?
I'm very good, thank you. Great to have you here. So tell us, what the chips is this tech translating thing all about?
So I consider myself a client advocate or a consumer advocate when it comes to technology. So I help small business owners in particular, and especially those of us over 40 who weren't taught how to use computers, to navigate the world of tech a little smarter and become more productive. So I specialize in Microsoft products, but also, you know, a lot of the common tech that we use these days. And saving people time and money so that they don't waste it, especially if they're on their own.
Speaking my language, talking about productivity and some tools and techie stuff. And I think like Tech Translator is so perfect because there's so many people who just go, oh, I don't get tech, or I'm not a tech person or whatever. And I think that's a real shame, because I know we don't all have to be tech people to understand how to use and get the most out of some techs that can actually save us a shitload of time and money and effort and energy and stress and all that sort of thing. So,
and it's hard to avoid these. Very hard
exactly.
To avoid. You know, 20 years ago you could get a receipt book and a bank account and be on your way, and now social media and you know
some stuff.
You do.
Yes, exactly. Cool. So I obviously follow you quite a bit online, and we're in a lot of the same circles and that sort of thing. So I've got a pretty good idea about some of the things you do. And my little inner geek goes a little bit crazy every time I see you post something, and I'm like, ooh, I wonder what that's all about. So that's really cool. But what we want to talk about today, which I'm really excited about, is anyone else who says the P word as much as I do. So we're talking productivity.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Now, I love productivity too. When I first started my business, I was very inarticulate, and I said things like, I'm really good at organizing things. Do you need me to organize something for you? And now my part of what I often say is I'm a planning and productivity coach. So productivity is just so first and front and center. And for me, that means so many things, from having the right technology and having the right apps and knowing how to use them, or at least finding someone who does know how to use them, right through to outsourcing and doing as little as possible, basically, but getting the biggest bang for your buck with the energy and time that we do have. So I'm super excited to talk about this stuff today. The other thing, so you and I were going to talk about some stuff today, and I'm going to let you introduce it because you know it way better than I do, that I'm massive on personality typing. I love anything that can tell me like why I do the stuff I do and why I get along with certain people and why I don't, and what pisses me off and why and all that sort of thing. I'm totally into it. So I had Anna Grillo on the show.
Oh, brilliant.
We talked about MBTI in one of my very first podcast episodes way back when, probably almost a year ago actually. When I was in corporate, we were big on MBTI, and I just loved the pants off it. So I love that there's this other thing that is kind of still new to me, which is all about personality for productivity.
Yes.
Who knew it was a thing? How cool. Yeah. So tell us, what's it all about?
So I wanted to talk about, personality types and how that can aid or kill your productivity. Mm-hmm. So I've done I've done MBTI, I've done DISC, I've done all of those. And they were really good from that corporate perspective, where it was much more about the relationship and how you would fit into a team and all of that sort of stuff. But when you're on your own and you don't have to worry about those, it doesn't help as much. And I've done 2 different other profiling tools in the last year. So the first one was Shannon Bush from Creative Possibility has a personal leadership profiling tool. And I did that with her in September last year. And then recently, or about 6 months ago, I did Gretchen Rubin's 4 Tendencies. So she wrote about that as part of her book, The Better Than Before, and has done a lot of stuff online about it. And both of those tools were amazing for me to actually understand how I fit into my business and how I can make my business work for me as well as me work for my business.
So good.
Yeah, so the 4 tendencies has 4 different profiles. So there's the upholder, who just does things because it's the right thing to do and they said they would. There's the obliger, which I am, who needs external accountabilities. Then there's the questioner, who's that person that has to know everything before they will even start.
Yeah.
And the rebel. And most people, and rebel will do the opposite of what you tell them to do. Most people have 2 tendencies in them. So I have an obliger with a rebel tendency, which means that I need somebody to tell me what to do until I've had enough of them, and then I'll tell them to piss off. And
do the same thing anyway, or do something different?
No, do something different.
Okay.
Yeah. So it had understanding those tendencies in myself and the people around me has changed my business. I am an extrovert, but I work at home alone. And so when I'm working at home alone, my energy just goes and just crashes. And I can find myself, like when I first started my business, it was very easy to just go, just go and watch a little bit on Netflix at lunchtime, while I'm eating my lunch, and 4 hours later, I'm still there. And particularly when you are still new and you don't actually have client work necessarily, that's very, very difficult. And so once I did the 4 tendencies and I understood that I was an obliger and I actually needed external accountability, I started setting up systems and other tools like virtual co-working to actually make me accountable to other people and therefore accountable to my own business.
It's such a breath of fresh air. I absolutely, I totally dig it. And it's all of these sorts of things. I think understanding more about like who you are and why you're a certain way. You don't even have to dig back into the depths of anything. It's really just a right now kind of thing. And often I think when we talk about personality types, especially when you've gone from working in a corporate world to working by yourself, is I know when I've done MBTI that the facilitator said it's in your shoes off mode. So it's when you're most comfortable. But your shoes off mode when you're talking to your boss probably still isn't your shoes off mode, right? And I mean, I'm a J, so I'm naturally very organized. I do things very much ahead in terms of MBTI. I do things ahead of time. But I know there are people who are naturally Ps, which means they usually like skin of their teeth. They do things last minute. They procrastinate. They still get things done, and it's still to a very high standard, whatever. But it's last minute, which makes people like me hyperventilate because it's just too close to the wire. But then it makes them get shitty at me because I'm like, hey, you were due to give me that thing 5 minutes ago, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But yeah, when you kind of come into a business, the whole urgency changes. And I wrote a blog very early on when I started my business saying I really miss my boss. I didn't miss working in corporate. I didn't miss the travel. I didn't really miss my boss. Like, it was great to be my own boss, but I really missed having that accountability, that follow-up, and also the pat on the back, when I had done something really great, because I'm probably the same. If I did this thing, I probably would be an obliger as well. I'm very much, it's called the Recovering Perfectionist, and I'm also a recovering yes girl and a recovering people pleaser. But there is still a big part of me that does that, right? If I've got, like you said, if you've got a client and they're waiting on something and they've paid you, you bloody well get it done. But if it's just for me because it's in my shiny object box and I took it out and I thought, oh yeah, I might create that thing, there's no urgency. There's no one telling me, wow, Claire, that's amazing. Well done. You've got it done a week before it was due. It's not a thing. So there's no, like, the motivation thing there is definitely not a thing. So yeah, I think it's really interesting, and probably understanding, yeah, like you said, when there's no team dynamic, what's the where does it all, how does it all kind of fit in, and how do you make sure that you still get stuff done?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's been a really big change for me to actually set those tools in place. So I actually started my own virtual co-working club. So I have there's 20 or so women in the group, but there's probably half a dozen regulars from across Australia, and we all, similar to a lot of other virtual co-working clubs, but we have set times during the week where we're all going to get together, and you might have different people on different calls, but it's just right. Somebody's expecting me to be at my desk at that point in time, and I've told them that I'm going to be working on this for the next 40 minutes. So I really should. I mean, they're not that, some of them are 3,000 miles away. It's not like they can actually slap me on the wrist, but and they've got nothing to do with my business. But it just means that there's that tiny little level of accountability, and it has absolutely changed my business.
Totally. And look, I couldn't agree more. I'm very much, I'm much more likely to show up and do something if there's someone there. Partly, I guess, for the actual showing upness of, you said you're going to be there, you bloody well be there. But there's also that kind of, for me, like I said, I get quite a kick out of saying, okay, I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes doing my newsletter, and then coming back after 40 minutes going, yay, I've just hit send on my newsletter.
Yeah.
Like, that's really important to me, getting that sort of feedback. And I know that's not how, exactly, getting a bit of a gold star.
Yeah.
I've always been very transparent about that. When I was working in businesses or, in corporate world, whatever, people would say, so what motivates you? And you're supposed to say teamwork and getting the job done for the business. And I would always say, honestly, money and a pat on the back when I do something really good.
Yeah.
If I get a pat on the back for doing something crap or for doing something that was not as good as the thing I did last week, I'm just going to get pissed off. I don't need a pat on the back for everything. Yeah. But when I do something that's kick-ass or that's really good or that saved you money or whatever, I want some kudos for that, man. And when you're in your own business as solopreneur, there's no one to give that to you except for yourself usually. So, I build that into my business now, and I totally tell people about it, like my husband and my dog and my kids and my best friend, people who probably, they're like, yeah, great. I'm going to go over here and have some toast now. But no, I totally get that. So to what you were just saying, I started Batshit Crazy 3 months or so ago. And it's perfect accountability. And do you know what? Like there's a training component, there's modules in there, there's heaps of learning and resources. But the number one thing, I've just done a big survey on everyone who's in there. And the number one thing that a lot of them have said is it's that accountability. And what I think it kind of drills down to is that people have committed and they've prioritized the thing that they said is really important.
And they're dedicating time.
Exactly. So it's actually like, it's nice to have that time and the people around you, but it's actually a total gear change in your own mindset of going, I've actually said this is important and I'm actually going to commit time to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter about the other people because they don't really give a shit if you've sent your newsletter or not, right?
I don't know how many newsletters you work. You might set some goals at the beginning, but
that's it.
Unless they're actually on your list.
Exactly. That's right. You kind of fault that one, unfortunately. But I think just going, like I did a poll in a couple of groups ages ago and said, why aren't you blogging as often as you said you wanted to, or as often as you want to? And about 70 people replied, and about 70% of those people said time.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not time. It's not the thing. And then finally someone said, I want to say time, but I know it's actually that I haven't prioritized it. I'm like, ding, 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 ding.
Absolutely.
Correct. Right. So then people who come into a program like this or a co-working like yours or any sort of mastermind or whatever, just by making that commitment, whether you're paying for it or not, you've changed your mindset to go, yeah, it's really important. It's really important. But then all the other things are more important, to actually going, this is important. It's in the calendar. Someone is expecting me to show up. I can't just not. It's a total game changer. Game changer.
Yeah, it really does. It completely changes the whole way I've, even the way I've operated. I've then found that just by, having, when we first sort of started, because I had a part-time job at the start of the year, and so, my and I was rebuilding my website, so my time schedule for my business was just completely gone. There was no regularity or proper schedule of what I was doing when, and so no consistency. And so by building that back in, it was like, okay, so I've got to be at my desk at these particular times, and this is what's best to work on when you're doing those sort of 40-minute Pomodoro sessions. And it was like, okay, so because I was then getting stuff done and then feeling that sense of achievement and getting that gold star from the other person who said, well done you, I was then more motivated for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
It was that real, that snowball effect of actually, oh, hang on a minute. So I only did that on Tuesday, but I've been at my desk every day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, which when you don't have to be at your desk, it's actually a big sense of achievement for an obliger anyway. An upholder's just like, well, that's what I do. But, like that was a really big deal for me. And I got so much done in like this 3-week period where I was, bashing out my own challenge and blogs and all this other all this social media. My social media is scheduled to some of it till the end of January, some of it till the end of November, you know, like that's all done now. And so I don't have to think about that. And it then motivates you to do the other work because you've got that stuff out the way.
So true. Yeah. And you know, it comes back to some of those typical sayings or whatever, that if you want something done, you ask a busy person, or, you know, the more you do, the more you can get done, those sorts of things. And I think they're true to a point, and they're true for some personality types, probably like yours and mine. So we've already established if you are an obliger, co-working, accountability systems and that sort of thing works. Can you tell us about some of the other productivity personas, personality types, and what sort of tools the other ones might use, or have you really only investigated the ones for the obligers and the rebels?
I've mostly investigated the obligers, yeah, and the rebels, you know, it's some of that reverse psychology.
Yeah.
The question is, can overthink, you know, they want to know everything before they start, and for them it really does come down to that imperfect action of, right, you know, you almost need to prioritize what are the 5 most important questions you need answered, and everything else just has to go by the wayside.
Sure. Yeah, okay.
So there's space there, but Gretchen's got some amazing stuff online. She's got videos to go and watch to show you how to work better. Op holders don't really need, you know, tips with productivity. They just get stuff done.
Yeah, right.
But they can also tend to be the people who take a lot of other people's stuff on.
Yes.
So, you know, they're that busy mum who ends up doing everything for everyone else. So, they can get into trouble in that space. So,
interesting. I'm just going to follow this train for a second, and then I want to come back to more of the other tools and that sort of thing. I'm always talking about, obviously, the recovering perfectionist, recovering yes girl, saying yes to everyone. Always, like you said, if you're a busy mum, you tend to do your business, your house, your family, your socializing, all that sort of thing, and you come last, which I know there's a million amazing women out there who are trying to help us change our mindsets and our practical kind of things to overcome that. Yeah. And, you know, everyone's got their own journey around that and that sort of thing. In that sort of sense, what's your kind of journey been like in that? In that, you said you were working earlier in the year, and now you've got your business, and you've kind of come up with some of these tools and strategies to overcome that. Where are you at that? What's your opinion on the kind of keeping other people happy and learning to balance that out with your own stuff?
So I'm single. I don't have any kids, so that takes a lot of that pressure off. But one of the reasons that I started my business was because my mum was elderly and needing a lot more care and attention. And, you know, so I was able to offer that. She passed away March last year. But that brought with it its own, its own fun and games around productivity, because I'd already made the decision to prioritise her. When she got sick, I went, well, that's it. This is what I'm doing. And so I basically put tools down for my business and focused on that, which for that aspect was great, but it also meant that my business didn't really happen, and then went through the whole grieving process. We had to pack up all of our house and all that sort of stuff. And I think for me, it took me a long time to get back into a business framework in my mindset. And for me, it was essentially flow and knowing that the balance would shift.
Yeah.
And I think that's, parents of young children have got to think that way as well, and go, okay, well, this is a temporary, it's not short temporary, but it's still temporary. And there, you can, once, if the kids are little, obviously you've got to put more attention into them. Once they go to school, you've got more opportunity to do different things.
Yeah.
And I think it's just about actually having that longer term view of, what am I prioritising now? I did a workshop years and years ago with a coach who was talking about the instead of thinking of your life as a piece of pie, or a pie with 8 pieces that you could pull out equal shares of. It was much more like the front of a newspaper, where it was always a main story. And that main story today is different to the main story tomorrow. And obviously our lives don't shift quite that quickly, but over the course of a year and several years, they do. So you have the main story, then you have the next, the next lead, then you have the smaller story, and then you have the little bit across the bottom. And to me, that's always been a really good analogy to how we prioritise our life. You know, there was a time when Mum was fine, and I was, you know, younger and single, and I put a lot of my time into being on committees and, you know, going out to social events and all that stuff because I had the time, you know, I was able to do that. And then when Mum started getting sick, it was like, okay, well, now I spend more time here. And then when I had a partner, it was like, well, that's where my time goes. And so you've really, you know, you just, that front page shifts, really. That's, I suppose that's.
Totally love that so much. I said to someone earlier today, can you tell I like analogies? Because I used it quite a few. I really love that. I think that's a really good way of talking about it. And I know people get into this ridiculous debate over balancing and blending. And I'm like, potato, it's all the same thing, whatever word you want to give it.
Yeah.
Of course it's not. You can't say, well, I spend 3 hours here and 3 hours, and that's never going to change. It's not how it works. So but I think that's a really important lesson to learn, is to be okay with the fact that it flows and it changes, and the front page of the newspaper doesn't look the same from, you know, 1 second to the next. And, you know, when you are trying to balance all of these things, it does change every day. Like there's so many days where I've got a 3 and a 4 year old, and there's so many days where I've got like 8 hours of back to back. Seriously, I've got 8 hours of back to back one-to-one clients and podcast recordings and whatever. And next minute one of them's sick. Well, I haven't got 8 hours of work anymore. I've got 8 hours of cuddles and mopping up spew, probably. You know what I mean? And that's okay as well. And giving myself the permission to be okay with that, and giving myself permission to feel like I was letting other people down, even though on a practical level I knew it wasn't even an issue, because I've been pretty specific, you know, from the word go. If you engage me and you hire me, I might have to cancel because I've got a 3 and a 4 year old. I probably won't say those exact words, but you'll see from the rest of my life on social media, that's what happens, right? And it's okay.
Yeah. And even for me, you know, I didn't, without the kids, you know, when Mum got sick, I had 5 templates that I was designing that week.
Wow.
They'd all just come in at once, of course. Yeah. And you know, and I was able to, when, you know, Mum was first in the hospital, it wasn't as critical, and so I was able to take my laptop in, and while she was napping, all the other family were there, I was able to take my laptop away and do some work. But as she started to decline, it's like, well, this is not going to happen. And so I messaged those clients and said, look, this is what's happening in my life. You know, I completely understand if you want a refund and you want to find somebody else, and not one of them said, yeah, that's exactly what I need. I mean, my stuff's not critically time sensitive. And so, you know, they all went, yeah, when it happens, you know, and then as it got worse, because Mum was in hospital for 5 weeks before she passed away. So, you know, that was pretty solid, intense time. But, you know, I had a friend message them and say, look, it's not getting it. I mean, they were in a lot of the groups that we're in, and so they knew that anyway. Yeah. And they were completely understanding. And, you know, when I finally got back to them, they were like, this is great. Thanks very much. That's all good. You know, like, thank you for even doing it. You know, like we really didn't expect it to even get done in the end, because we've got much bigger things to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
When we're in this space and we can build the business that attracts those people and fire the clients that we're not interested in having, you know, if anyone actually had said to me, oh, you know, I want to refund,
really put me out.
I wouldn't have chased it.
And I mean, the first time I've had this similar conversation so many times, the first time that happens is so scary, and you think, like my thoughts when the first time that happened was, I'll never work in this town again, or something as dreadful and doom and gloom as that, because I thought that person's going to tell the next person, and it's just going to spread like wildfire, and people think that I'm unreliable, and, you know, all the stories, all those ridiculous stories that you tell yourself. And in actual fact, it almost it changes your mindset, because you realize you've done it and the whole world didn't implode, so it's okay. And also it makes you more human and more connected and more real and more authentic. And, you know, like I was in a position of probably 6 or 8 months ago where I was getting really busy. My husband was really busy, and we were like, oh, we might have to look at putting the kids in daycare for an extra 2 days a week. And we kind of went down that path for a couple of days. And then I'm like, for a couple of weeks, I'm like, what am I thinking? Instead of this business, I spend more time with them. Not like, what?
Yeah.
It kind of sometimes takes that little, I don't know, little nudge or a little thing just to get a bit of a reality check. And like you said, a bit of perspective to go, okay, what's going on here? What do I actually need to concentrate on? And often a lot of people who I speak to on the podcast or just in the group and that sort of thing, with this journey of the recovering perfectionist, there often is a catalyst. There's a thing that happened, whether it's becoming a parent, having some sort of trauma, someone passing away. There's often this thing that happens that people just go, I just can't do this anymore. I can't do all the things. I can't pretend that I've got my shit together and all, and it's okay. And then you kind of have to step back and go, what's really important, what's really going to move me towards my goals, big thing, rather than just doing it because it's on your to-do list.
And your life goal, not just your work goal.
Your life goal, exactly. And if it doesn't, I went to, I had Siobhan Joyce speak at an event, one of my events recently, and she talked about overwhelm, and just the way that she kind of broke it down was so obvious, but so bloody powerful, of just going, if you've got a goal to make X $1,000 a month or X $100 a week, whatever it is, and you've only got 10 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours, whatever to make it in, or that's how much you want to be working, next time someone invites you for a coffee date just cause it'll be nice, make sure bloody well reconsider what your priorities are. And you've got a filter to kind of put it back through to go, oh, actually, I really wanted to use that time to create that thing, send that newsletter, do that promo, schedule some posts, make some content, whatever. What am I going to get out of this 1 hour thing? And it takes 2 hours because you've got to travel and you've got to stop and you've got to, all that sort of thing. It just reframes things. And it's not just things like that. I mean, it's not all about making money. You do, want to make connection. And like you said, especially if you're an extrovert, you need to get out and touch human people from time to time. Do you know what I mean? Hello, cat. So there's so many different things, but I think if you've got your life goals, they have to be your filter with all of your to-do list. And I totally work in the space of planning and productivity as well, and one of the first things I often do is look at people's to-do list. Been on there for a couple of months, has the world imploded because you haven't done it? Delete it. Don't do it. Don't outsource it. Get rid of it, or put it in the shiny objects box for next Christmas, and we'll work it out then, right? Do less is kind of the big thing for me at the moment. Do less. Do more of the right stuff, but less of all the other. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, okay.
I see a bit of a rant. I love it. You get a lot of these Facebook ads and whatever for the multi-million-dollar businesses and whatever. And I'm like, without, it's not a money blog. I'm not interested. My goal is not to make millions. My goal is to work a lot less. For roughly the same money. My goal is to have this business operating 60 to 75% of the time, but still supporting the rest of my life.
Totally.
That's it, because I don't want to, my business mantra is about giving people that time back so they can spend doing time with their family or going on travels or, whatever.
Looking after their mum.
Yeah, exactly, rather than doing admin. And so if I wasn't living and breathing that, what would be the point?
Yeah, exactly. And so many of us are guilty of that, me included, that, I definitely get into these positions where I've got everyone else's content looking beautiful and I haven't done a blog for 4 weeks, or I've got everyone else's systems looking beautiful and I don't even have a workflow for my, I don't know, whatever. So it's totally a thing, right? And it's something that you've got to keep checking in with. And as long as it's still important to you, you don't have a business if you're teaching something that's not important to you, I think, or if you're showing something that's not important to you, because there's a reason, you're on purpose. And anyway, that's a whole different conversation. Can you tell us, we've talked about co-working and accountability and the importance of that as a strategy for most people. What other amazing tips and tools and productivity hacks do you love that people can access or people can do for themselves?
Oh, well, keyboard
Where do we start?
Keyboard shortcuts are my first productivity. Learn to use your keyboard over your mouse, you will be so much more productive. So in my industry, so I've spent the last 10 years doing systems training and technical writing. Where some people would measure dollars or something else, in my industry we measure clicks. So how many clicks does it take you to get to a particular part of a window or into a system or whatever?
And this is from a business owner or a user perspective?
User.
Okay.
User perspective. So whatever system you're using, how many clicks on a mouse does it, whether that's you've got to open a menu and then you've got to click that and then that opens a window and then you've got to type something in and then you've got to click another button. it's all about clicks. And I once actually did a case study on how many clicks it took to document a single process. And but so keyboard shortcuts are my first big tip. But I suppose, sort of getting back to that original discussion of, again, knowing how you work. So I remember when Asana and Trello sort of first came onto the small business, sphere, and at the beginning they were quite different tools, even though their purpose was the same. And yet people were, completely averse to one and loved the other. Now they're a little bit more similar, and they've got similar functionality, and so people, can switch between them a bit easier. But, I opened Trello and I just went, oh God, I don't know how to work with this,
Yeah.
But when I opened Asana, I went, okay, it's list-based, right? I get that, and so I was able to work with it. But I see so many people with all kinds of tech, and paper business processes and whatever, but they push through and they persevere with a system or a process that is not working for them.
Yeah, sure.
For them. And if you're a solo business owner and there's no one else in your team, why are you doing that? Like, it's different if you're part of a business that's got 300 employees and
that's just what they use.
That's right. Okay, you've got to do that. But there's probably still ways that you can work better with it, and yeah, so I think that's probably my biggest productivity.
So find a tool that actually makes sense to you and works for your business.
Yeah, if you're not overly tech savvy, don't have 15 different tools, because you're going to have to switch interfaces, the way something looks and acts, and you're going to have to switch that, which for someone who's not techie will take a whole mind shift. Yeah. And more often than not, you've got something on your computer that already does it. You just, you've been
not
swayed by this bright and shiny object that everyone else is using. And I get ranty.
Yeah. Look, I totally agree. And I am an avid user of Asana, and I was the same. When I started using Asana, I hated it. I couldn't work it out. It didn't make sense to me. I went to Trello. I loved it. So I moved everyone to Trello. Then I worked out Asana finally. Yeah. And now I love Asana, and I wouldn't touch Trello with a 10-foot pole. But it's like, I get that some people would like different things. Right? I think the two things is, number one, that things like Trello and Asana, and even some mail servers like Active Campaign or whatever, they're almost too much of a blank canvas that you get started in there, and you're like, I don't even know what I should call my projects, let alone the columns and the cards, and do I use the subcategories, and it's almost too much of a blank canvas. So you almost need someone to help you work out like best practice or a starting point. But even before that, I think probably the foundational thing which helps with, not just like, often what happens is we go and get Asana, and we're like, oh, shiny object, oh, this is pretty, I'm just going to put some stuff in here, and you create a system, a workflow, a to-do list, a project management thing, or an automation sequence. And then it's all finished, and you sit back and you're like, oh, that's pretty, but it still doesn't work how you want it to, because there's no strategy behind it, right? So before you get started with the tech and all the how it's going to work and how amazing it's going to be that you can put a tag here and that will trigger a set of before you have all that, you need to work out what you're using it for, what information you need to get out of it, which will then like tell you what information you need to put in it, and what sort of experience you want to have or you want your clients to have. So I listen to the Active Campaign podcast. I'm a total geek. I don't listen to fun podcasts. I listen to technical ones when I'm driving around, and imagine all the amazing ways I could automate my email sequence and add tags and triggers and all that sort of thing. Anyway, but I listen to that, and they sort of say the same thing. Like, it's useless having a beautiful automation system if there's no strategy behind it. Yeah. So if we talk about something like that, if you want people to find, like, I don't know, read a blog and then click here and then they get a freebie, and then they go down this beautiful path of learning about who you are and what you do and all that sort of thing, you need to know what that path looks like and the outcome you want from it before you go and start fiddling around with templates.
Absolutely.
Right? So there's got to be a reason. And like you said, if you can keep it to as few as possible. And when I first started, probably the biggest group of people I was working with were people who were in really established business, and they were making great money, and they were maybe moving from like an in-person or an in-clinic to an online-based business. And they'd done exactly what you said. Like every time someone mentioned a new app, they're like, oh, that sounds good, I'll get that. Oh, that sounds good. And they end up with 25 apps that they have no idea how to use.
At $10 a month each.
At $10 a month. And it's really overwhelming, and you start to feel a bit stupid because you've got these things, and A, you're paying for them and you're not using them, and B, you're just not using them and you can't work it out. But it totally comes back to that. Keep it simple. Like find something that works for you. If you can't find someone who can show you, or you can do like some quick, however you learn, if you can do some quick
YouTube video
on YouTube or something like that, of course, that's cool. If you need someone to hold your hand and walk you through it, do that instead. But if it doesn't start to click really quickly, find something else.
Absolutely.
I don't know how many times I say, Asana, I love Asana. And 25 people will be like, I hate Asana, but I love blah, blah, blah. All these things that I've never even heard of. Like there are so many tools that do more or less exactly the same thing. And some people love them and some people hate them. And that's okay. You don't have to follow the crowd. You can totally
No, and I did a Facebook Live a few weeks ago about the questions that you should ask somebody recommends tech to you, because so much of it is, it's not just about the app, but it's, well, why are they using it? How long have they been using it? You know, why do they think it's good for you? Do they know anything about your business? You know, like we see all the time. Somebody goes on a Facebook group and goes, oh, does anybody know what app I should use for such and such? And you get 300 different versions from people who know nothing about that person's business. They don't know anything about the outcome that they're interested in, what their budget is, you know, what their skill sets levels like. And,
true.
And they just get recommended all these things. And I'm guilty of it as well. You know, I've seen some things and I go, oh, I use this. But I never say this is the thing for you. I'm like, this is what I use. Because, you know, you can have someone who's been using a system for 2 months, never tried anything else similar to that app, and go, oh, I use this, it's great. It's like, well, based on what knowledge?
Yeah.
You know, so I've spent a lot of time in my corporate career working on big custom applications. You know, the last project that I was on was $16 million when I left. And they didn't document the requirements properly at the beginning. So $16 million later, it still wasn't working. You know, you think what a small business could do with that money. But because they didn't sit down and actually understand how people worked and what they needed to do with it, and then they went and got a tool that was off the shelf that didn't really work, and then they tried to customize it. And it's like, it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We could talk about this for hours and totally geek out over all the different systems and debate Asana until the cows come home, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But wrap it up for us, Lynette. Tell us, what are your key takeaways in terms of productivity and moving forward with strategies and things that are aligned to what is actually natural to your personality type?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think that's the thing, is actually understand what that personality type is. So go away and do the tools. You know, Gretchen Rubin's 4 Tendencies is free. There's free versions of MBTI. You know, if you're a proper practitioner, you've got to pay for it. But there's free versions where you can get lots of information about how you work. Understand that. Be self-aware of, you know, are you a morning person or a night person? Do you need to have lunch at a particular time? Do you, what's your...
Quite specific, isn't it?
What's your tech level? Because it all affects your schedule, your metabolism, how your brain operates throughout the day.
Yep, totally.
You know, what kind of food you need to eat, all of that sort of stuff. Put all of that in place. Put your, you know, if you need to, like I generally have to have lunch before 12 o'clock. But I've noticed that as I've been busier and I've been, excited about what I'm doing, quite often it will get to 1 o'clock and I go, oh, that's surprising. But if I haven't eaten breakfast by 8 o'clock, the day's basically useless. Like I know that about myself. I know that I need that external accountability. So I established my own co-working club. I found my own accountability buddies and went, right, let's do this. And even if you've got one other person that you can call and go, right, we need to set up a thing because I'm not working, I'm not working well today. I need help. You know, just find that, what are your strengths and weaknesses, you know, and where can you get help from somebody else, and where can you help somebody else yourself? I think that's my big thing. But understand yourself and how you work, and don't worry about how everyone else works.
I love it. Amazing. Perfect. Self-awareness, strategy, reason, support, all the things. I love it. Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's really cool. And, entrepreneurship is definitely a big journey in that, because you just do incidentally learn stuff. Yeah. I know I yesterday took the kids to the cinema at about lunchtime, and by about 2:30 when we got home, I just wanted to fall asleep on the couch. I was so tired, and I'm like, why have I got no energy? I've done no work today. I've just been sitting around watching movies. Yeah. But we'd had popcorn and sushi. Yeah. All I've eaten is carbs. Of course I'm going to feel tired at 2:30. Do you know what I mean? So, little things like that you listen to your body and your energy, and journal it if you need to, track it if you need to. But yeah,
track it if you have to, whatever works for you. But
perfect.
And there will be days where you actually just do need to have
totally. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Where can we find you? Where can people face stalk you? I'm lovingly into stalk you.
I'm over all the interwebs. So kitsandbits.com.au is my business website. I'm on Facebook. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. All the other bits. I'm there. I'm not as active on the other bits.
That's okay. We'll have all your links in the show notes, and the links to everything that you mentioned as well in show notes. So if you can check that out as well. But it's been awesome chatting with you. I've really, really enjoyed this. I totally love anyone that I can geek out on productivity and hacks. Yeah, right. We're so rock star. I have to go now because I need to organize something. So, awesome chatting, Lynette. Thanks so much. And look forward to chatting with you again really soon.
Cool. See ya.
Okay, see ya. And that is absolutely it, my lovely. So I hope you've really enjoyed the episode. It was great fun recording that one, as it is with all of them. If you'd like to connect, I'd love to stay in touch with you. I have a beautiful Facebook group community at bit.ly/The Recovering Perfectionist Crew, with all capital TRP and C. I have a massive goal this year to get 50,000 downloads on my podcast, and I've got a YouTube show as well. So I'd love for you to help me out if you can by either subscribing to the podcast on iTunes. So if you want to go over and do that now, that would be awesome. If you have a couple of favourite episodes, or if there's one favourite episode that you've really enjoyed, I would love you to share that with anyone who you think would get as much out of it as you have as well. And while you're in iTunes, if you can jump in and give it a review, that would be amazing. iTunes definitely helps out podcasts that have got some good ratings and reviews and some really interactive listeners. So I would really appreciate your help with getting to my goal of 50,000 in 2017. The show is also available over on YouTube. The links are always in the show notes, so you can head over there. So it's The Recovering Perfectionist on YouTube. There's a channel for that as well. So jump in and leave your comments. You can watch all of the episodes in video. So if you want to see what we look like and our crazy hand gestures and facial expressions and all of that sort of thing, absolutely jump in. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel show as well, and then you'll be kept up to date when there's some new episodes that come in there. So love your support. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's hello@clairebarton.com.au. Always happy to receive your emails and open up a conversation. All right, big love. I'll chat with you soon. Bye.